Thank you very much for coming. I think both speakers have highlighted in a very detailed manner in terms of where your money has gone. I would just like to sum up before we open up for Q&A. And one of the things I want to tell you is, I'm really happy that over the years, people keep getting more and more interested on our budget. Usually, it's always considered a very dry subject. People hear, okay, the announcements, what are the goodies going to be received by the civil servants, by the pensioners, so on and so forth. But thanks to the exposés by the Auditor General's Office, which to date has not been taken action against, and other sort of information, I remember about 4 years back, nobody really understood what contingent liabilities meant. But the average person on the street now knows contingent liabilities means how the government is actually trying to hide the amount of debt they have actually incurred on you. So KLIA2 from 1.9 billion ringgit has now reached 4 billion ringgit. And trust me, it will only increase before it actually officially opens come May of next year. So my point here is this. While we know all of this, I think it's important to understand the budget, the extent of freedom allocated to your members of parliament to question how your money is being spent will affect your day-to-day life. Now, I was just with Mrs. Sarah Joseph, who was the victim. Her son, Freddie, was abducted in front of her in her house. So, it brings the question, we were lucky enough that a passerby found her 20-month-old son at Setiawangsa, and he was found unharmed. But there's countless other children, whether it's Nurin Jazlin, I can name so many victims. And the end has been more than just tragic. Okay? So for me, how your money is being spent, how policymakers decide to prioritize certain allocation and how to spend more money, for example, on the police force, will affect your life. It's not just about, okay, it's nice to hear in terms of the exposés brought forth. Sometimes the only thing we can do in Parliament is to have fun, making the minister look slightly foolish. But we must understand that it has very, very negative ramifications for everyone's life. So I wanted to start first, but as to just start understanding how crucial it is that you understand your budget, that your Prime Minister is transparent when he declares a big policy program or a new tax program or system such as the goods and services tax, because it will affect everyone. Now, one of the things we look at before we plan is the trajectory of our economy. Malaysia, if you look at the report by Bank of America Merrill Lynch, this report came out in the year 2010, but it tracks the position of every economy in the 1980s, for example. Malaysia was at par with South Korea. We were considered a young and poor nation. Fast forward, in that particular report, they said, come 2030, Malaysia will be young and poor, whereas South Korea would have made leaps and gains in terms of having sufficient economic growth to match the needs of its population. I'm not saying that it doesn't have another set of challenges, but the point here is we are left behind. Our population is going to be predominantly young, but poor. So this is the future that awaits us. It's not because Pakatan says it. It's not because we want it. We are just describing to you what is out there by professional economists, by a report that is credible. So when you look at that, as policymakers, you start planning, allocating your budgets to fit the needs of your population. And that's why, if you look at closely, the Prime Minister, again, I know not many people track his statements because he doesn't say much, But he did make a statement recently after announcing the Putra Empowerment Program, and he said it's important to ensure that the majority are not stuck in poverty to maintain relative stability. Yeah? Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but the point is he is justifying the Putra Empowerment Program to maintain stability. Now, any one of you, if you look at the challenges in Malaysia, it's multiracial. We have about 80% of the population in the rural area, a majority of which are Malay Bumiputras, mired in poverty. If you talk about income levels, I'm not sure if you mentioned it, income levels, about 60% earn below 2,500 ringgit. Recently, the minister announced slightly more, 3,000 ringgit. Pittance. To the point that only 94% of our population are non-taxable because they get so little. That's the reality today. So the best way for the government to make money, not wanting to take it out from their own pockets, is to charge the ordinary poor, the average person, to ensure everyone in Malaysia pays tax one way or another. So what I'm trying to say here is the system that has been introduced by this current government, whether it's GST, whether it's the new unveiled Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, does not go a long way in addressing our challenges, which is to escape from being young and poor by 2030. That's what we want to do. Any right-thinking politician, let me tell you, sure, we look good when the government makes mistakes. We look good when Tun Ling Leong Sik escapes. In a sense, look lah, they're so incompetent. This corrupt person involved in this 11 billion ringgit scandal escapes. But we will be inheriting that reality. What do you do once you lose the money? We are going to be poorer as a federal government compared to the government today. So that's why I think the misallocation of priorities is going to affect us badly. Is that my timing?
No.
Oh, okay.
Still okay, YB. Tuan rumah advantage.
All right. So my position is the continuation of existing flawed implementation policies, meaning you can scream the best type of transformation pledges you want, but if you fail to implement them and you can't even control the expenditure of relevant ministries, you are going to exacerbate inequality. And that is why Pakatan is very critical on the Putra Empowerment Program, not because we don't care about the plight of the Malay poor, not because we don't care about the plight of the Malay professional needing assistance, because the way forward is to help everyone, not because they happen to be a member of UMNO, but because they deserve it and they are rewarded based on merit and talent. This is the main criteria that is missing from the government's agenda. Now, I want to return back to the issue of the kidnapping, because I think one of the key things why we say we want parliamentary reform, we want these things to be discussed openly, because we have been shouting about the Merrill Lynch report. We have been screaming about, I remember the new economic model that came out in 2010. Maybe some of you forgot. I remember because we all read it. And the new economic model was a superb piece of documentation because it narrates exactly what is wrong with our economy, what is wrong with the way things are, and it mirrors the prescription of Pakatan Rakyat. The only problem is, after Datuk Sri Najib met Perkasa, suddenly it became just a footnote in Malaysia's history. It was replaced by the Economic Transformation Program, and that's, that was disastrous, because until today, all you have are mega massive infrastructure projects, that's government driven. I mean, how much more do you want to do this? How much more do you want to give the government control? Because you still need to invest in people and talent. So you look at the issue of police. I bring back the need to have, to redeploy the police force. Everyone knows one of the reasons why Mrs. Sarah Joseph, before her son was kidnapped, she was herself mugged a couple of months. Do you know that? She was a mug victim. So YB Surendran, who's her neighbor, the brother was actually helping her as she came home. Things were taken away from her. She just had a fight with the burglar. And I checked, one or the other, I mean, not just in Bangsar, you will meet someone, an acquaintance, a neighbor who has met, unfortunately, with a crime incident, who's been a victim of a crime incident. And the issue is when we bring it up, they keep saying there's not enough police in patrolling a particular area, in the taman. Tidak cukup polis di taman-taman, di balai polis. You know why? Because the majority of them are still placed as PJA, dahulunya dinamakan, apa dipanggil?
Polis hutan.
Police, I don't want to say that, nanti they say I insulting them.
A field force.
Yes. So they are they are operating in Lahad Datu, for example, securing the perimeters, but they are the police. So usually this falls under the duty of the military. But my point being, you must seriously look at why the minister is taking these decisions for you. I mean, it's reflected in the budget. Did you know that there are 30 special branch officers placed in London? Tell me, what kind of threat are we facing from London? Living the life in London. And we as taxpayers are paying for them when they could easily be transformed to be placed in our housing areas. To become part of the criminal investigation department. And this is important. And it can be done. And we found that Malaysia right now has 8,200 special branch officers. It's an increase, yeah? Because we are known during the communist insurgency, the Darurat Emergency Ordinance, as one of the key examples, because we managed to succeed against the communists. I mean, I thought lah kan, sometimes they still bring it up as a danger, but I thought they're gone already. But anyway, so the increase, in the year 1954, we had only 459 special branch officers. Because I thought, Mayo, must be so many more kan, because they're so dangerous. So many communists in the area. In our area, only 459, less than 500. Today, we have 8,200 of them. Seriously, I mean, this is the reality. So I'm thinking, what is the rationale that we are spending a bulk of our budget to pay these special branch officers? Even during Pak last time, because you might think this is a continuation. But I compared with Pak last time, in the year 2008, it was only 5,000 special branch officers. So it increased about 3,000. Maybe Dato' Sri Najib needs, more special branch officers. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why. And, no. Opposition increase in parliament. Yes, YB Wong Chen has said it all. Because the more special branch officers you have, you pay for them, and of course you have to also pay on the research, field research they call it, that they conduct. On who? No, not on your average criminals. No, they're not interested in who stole your car, who tried to mug you, who tried to kidnap Freddy. No, they want to study us. And I prove it because the special branch last year churned out 380,000 reports, or about 1,000 reports a day, mainly on surveillance on politicians. Okay? At the same time, now just to compare for you, to make the comparison with for you, the Criminal Investigation Department, which handles the issue of thefts, burglary, etc., solved about 60,000 cases. So 380,000 reports versus 60,000 cases. And that is why, it is important for you to push this agenda, because my concern is, yes, in the short term, you can increase more patrolling, but you are only pulling policemen from nearby neighborhoods, whether Sri Hartamas to Bangsar, and then to Kepong, because you don't have enough. Most of them are not part of the criminal investigations department. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see the rising problem in terms of crime reflected. Yeah? Why? Because people don't have enough to make ends meet. And once this problem will be exacerbated by the introduction of GST come 2014. You see, the government, 2015, the government right now, all the programs, I'm going to focus on women, because for women, they give more money to assist, about 2.2 billion ringgit compared to 1.9 billion ringgit in 2013. Unfortunately, it's all for handouts. It goes for handout programs rather than empowering, retraining, reskilling women. And trust me, there's many programs, because at the end of the day, I just met Professor Muhammad Yunus from Grameen Bank. This is Bangladesh, much more corrupt than Malaysia. In this case, we lost to them, okay? But when he created Grameen Bank, which has been introduced in New York, he introduced Grameen Bank in New York because the alungs in New York charge, guess how much interest rate?
50.
Please 1,000% interest rate in New York City, yes. So when he charges 15%, there's so many takers. And in Bangladesh, they only lend to women for microcredit programs. They lend to women and they say, no, we don't want to give you money just like that. You come, you produce an idea. You give us your business model. And they say, but we don't know. No, you can come up with a business model. And today, after so many years of being introduced, 97% is their rate of repayment. 97%. And this is done. And I told them, yeah, but Malaysia is very challenging. No, I said, no, YB Nurul, sorry. You have no excuse. You know why? Because Bangladesh is more corrupt. And we can do it. So whatever you do, in Malaysia, all of us, we are agents of change. We don't need to wait for the Prime Minister. In a sense, you keep pushing the agenda. You keep pushing the agenda. You see, I think the priorities of even giving BRIM, it might be unpopular to say this. What kind of culture do you leave the constituents? Dependency. They take a lot more from the rakyat, mind you, through GST. They take a lot more. And through they give BRIM, couple of billion only. But the point is, when you are seen to be giving, you leave a certain culture, and that culture permeates through the society. And my point being, we can change this. After all, Professor Muhammad Yunus came to Malaysia at the invitation of the Prime Minister. So the question we should ask, hey, Prime Minister, when are you going to implement the programs? Huh? He is using our money anyway to invite all these distinguished, Nobel Peace Prize winner, etc., to come to this country. So I think it's important to understand this whole budget, it does not address the fundamental weakness of our economy, needing quality human capital, needing to revamp the education system. Can you imagine what kind of country are we still arguing about whether you can slaughter cows in schools or not? I'm sorry, this is so third world mentality. Maybe fourth world, because at this day and age, a multiracial society, you have mosques, you have temples, you should be able to understand each other's sensitivities and move on and address and engage as best as possible and focus on the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, ladies and gentlemen, is of reform. That's why Pakatan Rakyat, Trust me, who's not more depressed after we lost, even though we won 52% of the popular support? You're looking at these faces lah, of course lah, depressed. But we remember, no matter the difficulties, we still have the people's support. You know, people braved so many challenges, tactics, fear tactics, threats. Malaysians overseas came home in droves just to vote for us. So we make sure this year, we came up with an alternative belanjawan. It might not be enough, and I know we must do more, but the point is, we didn't allow some small setback to affect the need to move forward. So we have an alternative budget, and of course Nurul Izzah was also part of it, but the point is, final point, we are going to suggest the following steps to address the weaknesses of the economy. Number one, all ministries must be mandated to cut 10% across their expenditure, wastages. That means 10% cut. This amounts to a saving of 8.3 billion ringgit. The Prime Minister cannot become the Finance Minister. Because so much work, Prime Minister, travel here, travel there, announce this, announce that. No time to become Finance Minister. Okay, and of course, in terms of GST, we believe there should be certain conditions that have to be met before we implement goods and services tax. The issue of minimum wage has to be universally implemented. And of course, we are looking and considering the introduction of capital gains tax. Those who are working in Khazanah might not like it. We are also going to abolish Pemandu, Permata and PLKN, a national service. And we have reasons for this, but the point is, a lot of the money spent for Permata is taken from the existing ministries and existing programs. It disrupts the entire system. Additionally, with Pemandu, because people say we have a bloated civil service, well, it becomes even more bloated when we pay exorbitant rates, Kian-Ming, to the consultants in Pemandu. And that is what we are introducing for now, including parliamentary reform, so that all these things will be discussed in a detailed manner through a standing parliamentary committee, like in other countries, like in the UK. Even the issue of security, they will have a parliamentary standing committee scrutinizing every single one decision made by the Home Minister. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, if you understand the need for reform and you help us in pressuring the government and you inundate them with emails, and more than that, faxes, suddenly you see the Prime Minister, don't just say hi, bye. Say, hey, Prime Minister, when are you going to resign as Finance Minister? I tell you, it will affect him. We are all human beings. That's why when you have the will, trust me, we will make this happen. And we will emerge more victorious. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.